This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. Today, I have Aret Muradyan, a retired Victorian police officer with over 30 years of experience. Over 3 decades in the force, Aret has faced high-stakes situations, led teams through crisis, and navigated the intense pressures of policing. Today, we're going to unpack his journey, how he managed stress in some of the most challenging moments of his career, what it takes to lead in an environment where every decision matters, and how the principles of teamwork, leadership, and resilience in policing translate into the business world. Let's dive in. Thank you, Aret, for joining me on the show.
And thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the rabbit hole we're going to go down.
I am a bit nervous interviewing a police officer, but before we get to the deep dive in that rabbit hole of yours, where I'm really excited about, tell us a little bit about yourself, your career, and let's get to know you a little bit more.
Right. So I was born here in Melbourne to immigrant parents who came from overseas, were Armenian background. You know, my parents they're still alive, and, you know, they were your generic factory worker. My father was working at the time for Datsun, Nissan at the time, back in Clayton. Mum was one of the first female electronic technicians for telecom way back in the late 70s, 80s. So that was a great feat for her, especially coming from a female background. And obviously I've got myself, my sister. As my journey went on through high school and whatnot, I ended up joining the police force at 19. And we'll discuss how that even came to be. Pretty much did a 30-year career, retired as a sergeant, worked in many, many, many different areas in policing, seen a lot of the good and bad and ugly that general population really doesn't get to see. And then on the back end of that, I finished a law degree only a few years ago, did a postgrad, became an admitted lawyer, and it's all fun. And now my eldest daughter's just got into law school. As she says, "You've inspired me watching you doing what you do." She goes, "So I've applied myself and now I'm in law school." So it's great.
It's awesome. So let's talk about that. What made you become a police officer at 19? What was that? What happened? Because I've known you, I was about a little bit younger than yourself. You're very close friends with my cousin. And so I've known you around that time. I would not have guessed that you would have been a police officer. The two of you are very larrikin types. And so I'd love to know the story that got you into the force and into the academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the mid-'80s, my parents used to own a milk bar in the suburb of Bentley. I was 13 years old. It was 1988. And for those who are old enough listening, they'll remember this, and those young enough, if you Google, you'll find the information. Wall Street happened where the 2 police officers were killed on duty. So they were called to a job which was pretty generic. A car was abandoned that had its lights on still in the back streets of South Yarra in Wall Street. A couple of young guys, I think they were still in their early 20s. One had only been out of the academy only a few years, doing a night shift. They've turned up to this particular job and then they were ambushed and killed, both of them. So you can imagine like the uproar within society at the time, what had gone on. So that happens and the news obviously hits. The next morning, the newspaper guy for the Herald Sun, or the Herald as it was called back then, turns up, delivers all these newspapers. I pick them up because I'm helping mum and dad open the milk bar before I go to school. And I look at the front cover and there's this article about 2 police officers that have been killed on duty. And I pick up the newspaper and I turn around to my mum and I go, "I'm joining the police force when I get old enough." And I put the newspaper down, and as you can imagine, being of ethnic origin...
She's like, "There's no chance."
She's like, "Yeah, well, a little bit more colourful than that." And I said, yeah, we'll see what happens. And then I kind of left it at that. And then as the years went on, I wanted to particularly get into law school or the police force. And then as it happened to be, at 19 years old, I'd put my applications in, sort of bumming around at that particular time. It was coming towards late 1994. I hadn't said anything to my parents about what I was doing. I kept it very, very low key. And then I remember I got a letter, the acceptance letter, saying, congratulations, this is the date you start, this is what you need to bring and whatever else. I've actually still got all those letters, that's funnily enough. And that particular day, Mum goes, when are you going to get a job? You're just bumming around now. It's coming the summertime. Like, what are you doing? And then I give her this letter and I just kept quiet. So she's opened this letter and she's looking at it, and the first thing she sees is Victoria Police. And she's like, what have you done? I'm laughing at this point. I said, just read it. She reads it. She goes, what does this mean? I go, well, next week I start in the police academy. She says, what police academy? I go, the Victoria Police Academy. Anyway, she gives a letter to my father. She goes, tell him something. And my dad turns around and goes, that's what he wants to do. We just got to let him do what he wants to do. And, there was the start of that pretty much 30-year journey. And I got to say, up until last year when I retired, literally a year ago when I retired, when I finally told Mum, okay, I'm done, I've retired, was when she said, okay, I can rest easy now. So even though in certain areas in policing I was not always in the front line, I would have been in an office or in a certain area where you weren't always dealing with members of the public, there was that fear factor of you're a cop, something's going to happen. So that's the very early days of how it came to be that I joined the police force.
That is a great story. So tell me, 30-year career, you would have been in different parts of the police force, and you mentioned that parts of your role probably wasn't as dangerous as other parts. 30 years, what did you do? What was some of the roles you had and departments you worked with in the force?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the early days when I graduated, I'd sort of made that conscious decision of wanting to go and get amongst the heavy workload and to learn. I thought I've got to either sink or I'm going to swim. Back then, you kind of had an option to be able to say, this is where I'd like to work. So I thought St Kilda would be a really cool place to go and learn because, back then in the 90s or even before then, you heard all the stories about St Kilda and how it was just like a cowboy country, and there's prostitutes, there's drugs, there's dudes with guns, there's people robbing each other, and it's just a free-for-all. It's just crazy town, right? And I'm like, I want to get in amongst that action.
Wow.
As opposed to, I can go to work at Camberwell and just drink coffee all day and be totally bored, right? So I end up at St Kilda. So not St Kilda Road. People mistake St Kilda with St Kilda Road. So St Kilda Police Station itself. So I turn up there, 6 of us who graduated together, we all front up. And then that was just a whirlwind ride. It was just crazy. And the workload was full on intense. Back then, in the mid-90s, they averaged at a 12-month period of work at St Kilda Police Station equated to 2 years of work that you would do anywhere else in the state. Like, that's how full on the work was. And it was great because you really learnt a lot really, really quick. Great mentors, and you learned in a very, very short period of time how to be able to deal with scenarios, situations, and actually manage things that were going on, which probably at another station you would have learnt it, no doubt, but the process would have taken a lot longer because the work wouldn't have been as heavy.
You wouldn't have been as exposed to those opportunities at the rate that you were in St Kilda.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we had an opportunity to come across quite a number of the gangland people because I used to like hanging out in St Kilda, and people were like, what were they like? And it was like, they were just normal people to talk to. They did what they did amongst themselves, but when you were coming across them and just having a conversation with them, funnily enough, they're actually very respectful.
What do you get thrown in? Is it you go into St Kilda Police Station and there's obviously a lot of you there. What are you doing? Are you in the car? Are you traffic? Are you on the streets walking around? Like, what's the actual role? Or are you just a police officer, sort of a graduate, as we would call it here in the accounting industry, and you just get exposed to that? So is that how it works? How do they induct you is probably the question.
It hasn't actually changed a lot in the 30 years. So when you graduate, you go into town, and a lot of people would see the police doing traffic direction. So they do a number of weeks, I think maybe it's about a month in town, where they get exposed, they do foot patrols, they might do car patrols, and particularly they're teaching them how to do the traffic direction, because it's probably the best place to go and learn it, right? You've got trams, you've got foot pedestrians, you've got cars, you've got construction going on everywhere. So you've got to be on the ball and be watching everything that's going on in real time to make decisions of what you're doing. So then you'll see they go to the booze buses, which I think now they do it towards the end of their stint in the academy, whereas it was reversed as a role before. And then once you've done that, then you go out to your training station. So wherever you've been nominated in the state, particularly, I guess, if you're a country person and you want to stay country, you'll go back home or to a country location. And then wherever you are in Melbourne, you'll get to a location within proximity to home, like within reason. And I guess at a station level, it's where you start to learn the craft of policing, and you'll do normal patrols in cars. Foot patrols, generally, normal stations won't do it. Maybe like a station local to Chadstone might, because you've got the big shopping centre. And then on top of that comes all of the other generic work, which is all the paperwork at the end of dealing with someone who's offended, whether that's a traffic accident, they've been stealing, whatever the situation is.
Well, let's get into it. Let's dig that rabbit hole. Okay. So I wanted to just really acknowledge, obviously, the audience we have are business owners, executives, and they're in high-paced environments, and they've encountered challenging, difficult, and stressful moments always in their careers. And we, as business owners, go through those stressful moments. I would love to hear a particular challenging incident during your service where stress levels were exceptionally high. I mean, how did you manage that situation, and what strategies did you deploy to maintain stress? Because we can learn so much from that situation. So I'd love to hear that incident and how you've dealt with that and what's your feedback.
So we'll fast forward to when I was a sergeant, because now you're man managing. So I'm working in the city. It's a Friday night, and I'll give you the context of the operational supervisor. So each station will have a station sergeant, which manages the internal crew, right? And you might have a station that has police cells, so an offender will be in there. So you've got to have a sergeant on duty. And then external to that, there will be a nominated sergeant who will be patrol officer, so the patrol supervisor. So when I was working in town, I was covering at the time St Kilda Road, Melbourne East Police Station, Melbourne West Police Station, North Melbourne Police Station, and then going up to sort of the border of Fitzroy and Collingwood as well. So you had literally 5 police units, and they had an extra unit with them as well. So you're looking at 5 to 6 response zones. So think of that whole Melbourne CBD, outer Melbourne CBD area. You're the operational supervisor, which literally means for that 8-hour shift, you are consistently out on a patrol, going and meeting your crews and whatnot, but also continually listening to that police radio. So there might be some just generic jobs like, can you go and serve a summons, or there's a noise complaint. And you kind of like listen to those and they're like, pretty rudimentary. It's like someone going, mate, here's my 23, 24 tax return. You look and go,
whatever.
It's
easy.
Cool. But then all of a sudden, someone from the Pratt family walks in and goes, I got $1 billion fuck up. And then you're like, okay, this is a bit different, right? So an example was, on this particular Friday, there was what's known as an affray. So when there's multiple people fighting with each other, there would have been 10, 12 youths. We're talking, they got bottles, they're bottling each other on St Kilda Road, Friday afternoon. People are freaking out. People are running through traffic. It was just a mess, right? So I get this job. The St Kilda Road unit's like, all right, cool, we're heading there. Then all of a sudden you've got to switch in your head to where's the location, where are witnesses, what injuries are there? And then in your head, you've got to map out that location.
Are you trying to map it out and saying what it's going to be looking like?
No, not even. I'm mapping out in my head, trying to remember the area and go, right, I've got to get how many different police units into that area to lock it down now.
Wow.
Before
you're on now, right? This is delivery time.
Yeah, so you're on. It's like, all right, maybe I need a highway patrol car. Come block it off here. Is there a transit patrol unit from the railway station in town? Can they just come across and help out? What's the situation? So you're always asking for a report, basically a live report of what's happening. So then that kind of comes to a head. You've got that under control, so to speak.
And are you doing this on the move? So you're driving to the location as you're processing this?
Yeah, without a map in my head,
Yeah.
without a map in front of me.
Yeah.
Only because I know the CBD area, right, at this point pretty well. So you're mapping it out, going, I need this, I need that, I need to put people here and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you get a job coming from the border up at North Melbourne where it's like the North Melbourne unit's tied up and we've got 2 people doing an armed robbery. And then you're thinking, who have I got? What's available? What have I put here? Now I've got to get people to this location. So then all of a sudden it's like, what have we got available over at Fitzroy and Collingwood? Because they're just on the border. They're not really people you're supervising, but it's kind of like, I need help. I guess it's if you're in the military and you're getting ambushed, it's like, man, we need to call an airstrike in, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, well, can we get permission to get these people to come over the border and come and deal with this? So you can have a day where it's just totally quiet and then you finish the day and go, hey, that was pretty standard, just a chill day. Or a day where everything is just blowing up in real time and then all of a sudden be like, oh, yeah, we just had someone jump in front of a train as well. And then it's like, I've got no one left. I've got no patrol units or anything to cover that particular mess as well. So that's when you've really got to be on your A game. So I guess in business world, it could be, let's talk about manufacturing for ease of conversation. There might be an order for a certain product to be made. It's got to be made and delivered by X date. But then all of a sudden, that couple of days leading into the delivery, there's a machinery fuck up. And then on the day that it's got to be delivered, it's got to be quality controlled. And then your QC guy's off sick. Someone got the sack early in the morning for, I don't know, stealing money or something from the business. And then all of a sudden, it's just you having to sit there and go, I've got to now get onto all these products, get it QC'd and get it out to the client and make them happy. When you look at that and then you look at policing, it's like you are thinking in quick time going, how do I put these fires out? Because when there's no one left, you're really, really starting to stretch and go, right, who can I now start to get in? Because there's certain areas, whilst police are police, there might be certain areas where they're like, well, we're detectives and we're already doing our detective work. So you're not going to get a detective to go to a train fatal. But it might be, hey, can you boys go down there and shut the scene down until we can get units to come in and take over? So there's always this pressure of who have I got, what's next? And that's what I really got attracted to with policing. It's because minute to minute is that unknown. It's just like a whirlwind ride for that whole 8 hours. And then there's days where it's just like, it's quiet. Like you do a night shift in the middle of winter, there's no one out. There's no one, and you're like, man, I've got to stay awake till 7 a.m.
Yeah.
I've got to do 7 nights of this.
What happened when you went to this fight and what happened? What was the conclusion of that particular incident?
So I think out of the 11 or 12 offenders, the crews rocked up very, very quickly, given it was a Friday and it was late afternoon. From memory, I think about maybe 4 to 5 of them were still around and were arrested. And they were only around because dudes are there with bottles that are smashed and they're bleeding everywhere and they're kind of like incoherent, dazed and confused. So they're a lot easier to sort of grab, whereas the other offenders had sort of fled on foot. And then I guess it's a matter of, all right, get detectives in, let's get footage, let's try and find out who these people are. Then you got the other guys that you got in custody who aren't really forthcoming and wanting to give you the information. And that's fine. I mean, they don't have to do anything. So it's always the fascinating side. It's like people get into these scenarios, they get bashed or stabbed or whatever, and they're like, I don't want to talk about it. And it's just like, you're right, you do you. It's fine.
It's fine. And how do you maintain composure? What techniques would you have used in that scenario or other scenarios? We do some leadership training in when something like that happens, right? When you've got the bombs going off, the manufacturing plant, the first word we say is calm, like just stay calm. We get taught that. And there's no point panicking. I can't change the situation. We've got to be calm, especially when you're annoyed or things are going on a lot. So what were your little techniques? What did you rely on in that situation that you said, it obviously comes with experience, but you've been there before, but what are the doables that you do in that situation to help you through that?
So for me, it's a matter of knowing that the crews that I would have on those particular shifts, so I would always ring them before we start a shift, have a chat and get to know everyone. And before you know it, you really get to know who's who. So you'd have a look at your sheet of who's rostered on and be like, oh yeah, Sevon's on the van crew at Collingwood. Good operator. I know when the shit hits the fan, go to guy, he'll sort it out. Yeah, they're new, not bad, bit to learn, but they can manage. So you mentally already prep yourself going, I've got a good crew on. So when the whole world's imploding, I can rely on these people and they will get there and they will feed me the information. So there's no point in getting high-peaked and freaking out because I'm reliant and I know that the people are good for it. So that would be a process I would do before I would even start the shift, especially if it was as an operational supervisor. If it was like a full-on, let's peel it back to like when I was in the, say, highway patrol days in my early part of the career, and all of a sudden you're called to like a double fatal, which no one ever wants to see, but you've got to get yourself to a position where I would actually do breathing exercises. And we talk about it now. It seems to be a common thing about
meditate.
Do a breathing exercise, sort of clear your head, and then let's get into it. So I would do it back then, and we're talking 20-something years ago. And it was like, okay, well, this is out of my hands. What has happened has happened. The fatality's happened. But now it's a matter of, okay, now I've got to confront it. Now I've got to deal with it. So I can't answer the question of how do we switch off, because we just do. We just switch off from it. And then more often than not, you get there, ambulance, let's say in a particular scenario where there's a traffic fatality, ambulance would probably be there before you. So it's a matter of, okay, what's the scenario? They'll tell you, and it's like, okay, cool. I'll go into my work mode. I'll deal with what I got to deal with. You got to deal with the deceased. You have to. But it's a lot more mentally calming. And the interesting thing is when you've learnt that particular art of taking a step back, reviewing it in your head for what it really is, and then being a lot more calmer about it, it then folds back into general life. A very quick story, to give you an example, was we were in Sydney many, many years ago, and the boys were, I think they were like 9 and 11 years old. And we just landed in Sydney on New Year's Day. I'd taken them for a holiday for a week, and they're like, let's go for a walk down to the harbour. We go for this walk, my boys and I go for a walk in the harbour, and they're like, oh, Dad, take some photos of us. And then I'm taking photos, and where we took photos near the harbour, there's all these limestone blocks. My eldest son, he's like, I want to get a photo closer to the water. And I'm looking at it, and it's all limestone. It's like got algae everywhere. You know it's going to be slippery as, right? So I've taken a few photos, and then he's gone, I want to go down to get a photo near the water. By the time I've said no, he's already slipped, fallen in. There's barnacles on the blocks. His hand goes on it, slices his hand clean through the centre. And at the time, he's just like, oh, until he turned around and there's just blood freaking going everywhere. And then his world just comes to an end. And then he's having this massive meltdown and crying. So anyway, I had to drag him out of the water. And I'm like, it's New Year's Day. There's like no one around. But I just go into work mode. I grab his wrist, lock it down to stop blood going into the hand area. And I finally find this work site, and there was a security guard in one of those work huts. And I'm like, hey, mate, come over here. And he's like, oh, what's up? I said, I need your help. He's like, no, it's all right. He's thinking, who the hell's this guy? So I turn my son's hand around and I go, I need help. He nearly collapses, and I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, I'm on holidays, but I'm in work mode. I'm dealing with him. This guy's about to collapse and start crying himself.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, you just inadvertently go into this work mode. And when it's all done, it's like, okay, cool. Even like about a year ago, driving back from where my boys are living with their mum, and I spot this smoke, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Drive around, and then the whole front of this house is on fire. And I'm like, oh, my God, get on the phone, get the fire brigade. And then all of a sudden I'm in work mode. I'm getting the neighbours, hey, mate, you need to get a hose. You need to do this. You get that car out of there or it's going to blow up. And I'm like, I'm retired, but I can't get away from it.
Yeah. But you know what it is? The skills that you have is so transferable. That example of the fire, I mean, I guess you've learned so much. You've been in the forefront of, all different experiences, and we don't get those real life sort of people experience. It's more contained in a manufacturing plant or an office, but it's such a valuable skill to have. Like, I did a little bit of CPR and that kind of training. I don't know what it's called now, first aid training. Everyone should do it because it's not just about doing CPR. It's about awareness around safety, cars. I'm like, this is life skills.
Yeah.
You've obviously had that on steroids being an officer, and it's so cool. I just think more and more parents that have young kids should just send their kids to first aid school just to get a comprehension of, and it teaches you. Someone's had a heart attack and you're a first aid officer, you have to be calm. You need to control the situation.
Yeah.
And I think in business, as a leader, even in sport, you're about to kick a goal, the siren's gone. The first thing they do is take a deep breath and be calm, right? And sometimes we forget that life is short and there's bigger problems in the world than that situation anyway, and we overthink things. So it's really, really great advice. I think it's amazing.
I want to touch on that first aid thing for a moment with a story. And so my grandma had passed away, my dad's mum. We have the funeral. We get home. Anyway, I go back to my parents' house. We're going to have some lunch, whatnot. I noticed Dad's at the kitchen table. And then all of a sudden he gets like white in the face and he's like starting to do this head sort of movement, dazing around. And all of a sudden he starts falling toward, and I'm like, he's just about to die on us, right?
Oh, no.
So I grab him, put him to the floor, and then I start heart compressions, and all of a sudden he comes back. And again, I'm in work mode, right? I'm telling my sister, you get mum out of it, because mum's freaking, yeah?
Yeah, get her out of here.
I'm like, get mum out of here.
Yeah.
Get on the phone, ring 000, and then come straight back, but leave mum in the back room. And I'm like, this is what you got to say. This is how old he is, this, that. Anyway, the short of it was he had low sugar level on the day, and it was pretty warm. And I guess the overwhelming, the fact that we just buried his mother, was sort of all got to him. But even then, the interesting part of that was my sister said, how the fuck are you so calm? It's Dad. Mentally, when I rewind the tape and look at it, it's just like you just go into work mode.
Wow.
And it's like, I know it's Dad and I know what I'm doing, but if I'm not calm,
I can't help him.
This whole place is just going to catch on fire and everyone's going to be freaking. So, yeah, it's very interesting.
It's
very
amazing. So much to learn. Talking about stressful environments, I've never spoken to you about this before, and if I'd love for you if you could share this. It involves a lot of traumatic things that you would see. You talked about the double fatality. Have you ever been in a situation where you really feared for your life and you're like, where all the calmness in the world just went away? Have you been gunpoint, shot at? Is there a story that you could share? And how did you, not only in the moment, but even afterwards, is there something that happened like that?
Haven't been shot at.
Okay, well, that's good for 30 years.
Yeah. I've had a knife pulled, haven't had a gun pulled. I've had someone try to grab my gun. I guess one situation was, so this is very early in my career. We'd gone to a particular location where someone had complained about a group of guys trying to put a particular person into the back of a car.
Oh, wow.
And the guy was covered in blood. We get there anyway, this guy had been stabbed multiple times at some particular location. And I remember getting out and going, hey, what's going on? And they just dropped this guy onto the footpath like nothing. And they're like, put him in the back of your van and take him to hospital. And we're like, well, we can't, because if he dies in the back of the van, then you're done. Anyway, this is in the days when we had the old big long batons.
Oh, yes.
Not the small ones that they carry now, but the big, long, plastic, heavy, like they were good. So anyway, my partner gets out. He was a fairly seasoned cop, and he's like, mate, we can't get him in. And then the two of them, I remember one was a fairly short guy, maybe 5'5". The other one was about 6'2", massive dude. And they've grabbed my partner by his jacket at the time. And I'm like, at the time, I think I was like 75 kilo, just wringing wet, like this young 21-year-old kid, right? So anyway, I'm trying to get in there and batten them and get them to select.
How many of them were there?
Two of them.
Okay.
But
big boys.
Big units, right? And I'm on the radio trying to get back up. The police crew comes on the opposite side of where we were, but there were like big flats and stuff. And they're like, oh, we can't see them. And then the call taker's going, oh, no, that's meant to be this particular street, but in another suburb.
Oh,
And I'm like, no, it's actually here. Like, you're around the corner. And this is happening so quick. And I'm like, we need backup. It's urgent. We got one guy stabbed. We got this going on. My partner's got his baton out, and then he's trying to strike him to get him to at least let him go. The big bloke's grabbed his baton
oh no.
and turned around to hit my partner. He's put his forearm up and he's shattered the forearm. So now he's out. So now it's just me
And these two
and
big
these
boys.
two big boys. So anyway, by this point, finally, you hear the sirens, you hear the cavalry, as we say, coming, and then all of a sudden all these police units come and then they subdue and we sort out the situation. But that would have probably been the one time where I was just like, wow, man, like he's just had his arm broken. I'm like, what the hell's going on? You know, and they're like, we're going to kill you. And I'm like, where are you?
Where are you? How old would you have been?
I would have been 20, 21. I would have been only about a year in. Yeah, and I reckon the other time when it was like my mentally scary was we got a job and it was like, be at a particular location, there's this brothel, some clients cracked the shits and he's rung up going, I'm going back there with a shotgun, I'm going to start shooting people.
Oh my God.
So we rock up there, parked around the area, and I'm just like, is he going to rock up? Are we going to get into this shootout with this guy? Like, what the hell, right?
So the guy's gone away, threatened, and says, I'm coming back.
I'm coming back.
How many minutes, hours, days do you wait? What? So where do you go, okay, you know what, enough's enough.
Yeah.
So what happened in that situation?
So we hung around, I think, for about an hour and a half. But every single moment of that hour and a half was just like, am I going to get home? Are we going to be in a shootout? What is wrong with him?
Yeah.
You start asking all these questions, but everything rolls back to, man, if he comes back and he's got his shotgun, and I think we had the old revolvers, like so he only had 6 bullets, right, at the time, and not like the automatics that the guys carry these days. So all of a sudden, you're like, well, I've only got 6 bullets, and if I start missing, and he's got a shotgun, that's spreads that could hit me. So you got all this stuff going in your head. You know, in the end, a police unit local to him, where he lived, had gone around and found him and put that scenario to bed. And then it was like, oh, cool, okay, I can go home now and I can chill. But out of all the mayhem in the 30 years, those are the two.
They're not too bad at it. It's not like...
There's probably
you were
more
shot
that's
at.
suppressed.
Yeah, you probably...
But I've had mates that have been shot at. I've had mates, unfortunately, who have been killed on duty. I've had mates who have, unfortunately, pulled the trigger on people in like really dire scenarios where they're in the corner and knives are out or a gun's been pointed. But that's part of the unfortunate part of policing, right?
You've done a little bit of work and you speak a little bit about mental health and you've done some speaking around that space. What's training or advice do you have to someone that's gone through that traumatic experience? Their partner might have died or they've had this experience. Yeah, the two big boys are gone and really heavy on them. How do you deal with the post? How do you get yourself out of deep, dark thinking? Tell us about your journey around how you've managed that. Or are you just a resilient man that's always wanted to be a police officer at 13? Still got to go back to that article where you've gone, 2 people died, I want to be a police officer. So
I know, right?
Tell me about that.
And I still say I got no rhyme or no reason as to, well, like people like, I want to join the police because I want to help. So they've already got this embedded thing. I'm a 13-year-old that's going, oh, man, 2 police got killed. I want to go and join the police.
And help.
And then people are like, you normal? Mm. So I'm going to give a very key takeaway, and that is in society in general, and I'm going to say this particularly for men, we have this thought process where we think it's weak to talk about the vulnerabilities of certain things that have happened, where mental health starts to creep in. And it can be simple as your marriage has ended and all of a sudden it's like, man, you know, I'm getting divorced. What this is going to cost me and I want to see my kids, and that takes a toll in itself, right? That's one scenario. Then you got scenarios where, let's talk about all the frontline workers. So you got fire brigade who are dealing with, people go, I have fires, but you go into a house and all of a sudden there's 3 kids that are deceased. Like people go, I could never be a cop. I'm like, I could never be an ambulance officer. The stuff that they're dealing with 24/7 and it's continuously trauma. Then you got the police. So, you know, we're exposed. Let's go to military when there's a war on. They're totally like coming back fried. and I'm saying that in a very respectful way because I've got a lot of mates who have been in military. But what I found is there's two roads, and a lot of it, and I won't just say men, but men and women, is that there's a road where they're like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to seem vulnerable or weak. And you find a lot of people who just don't get the help or don't have the backing of, say, family to try and understand it. Inevitably, they end up self-harming themselves. What I found is talking to others about your journey or things that have happened, all of a sudden people are like, man, I'm feeling exactly how you've been feeling. And I was always scared to talk about it. I just didn't know how people would look at me or deal with it. And I say to people, if there's anything that's haunting in your mind, is get onto it. Talk to someone. Some people won't get it. I understand. Some people just don't understand it. But I think if you've got one or two people that you can rely on and you can talk to and then seek help, it will help you out in the long run. What I learned and saw within my previous career was those that have come forward who are having PTSD, for example, which is very, very common. Management would be like, all right, cool, man, we've got to get you to help. Because there's that genuine desire of, I don't want you to be harmed anymore. I want you to actually get that help. So in external world of policing, like with corporates or businesses or whatever it might be, I'm not overly sure as to how management deals with it, but I think a lot of people get scared of it because they're like, if I say the wrong thing, am I going to trigger the person? All I say is if people are genuinely coming to you, sit with them. Don't really need to dig too deep in it because that'll just sort of bring up traumas again. But it's a matter of, okay, what are you doing? What help are you getting? How can we help? What do we need to do to help you? Because we don't want to lose you. You're a good employee. We want you back here. And if you need to get some time off, as long as it's legitimate, and legitimacy, a psych will pick up on whether people are bullshitting or not anyway. But, you'll find that someone, even if they've got to take a period of time off, when they come back to your workplace, and it's not about loyalty in that respect, but they'll respect you so much more because you've actually gone out and actually helped them.
Obviously, being in the police force, the structure is designed that there's going to be a lot of circumstances where the work is going to create the PTSD and things that will cause trauma and mental health. Did the police force do anything unique? Did they have programs or anything that you go, geez, they need to implement this into the corporate world? These are the things that the police force do well in this space that can really be scaled across the organisations. Is there something that you've seen that the force do well, or is it really about individuals?
So internally, there's like a welfare unit, a psychology welfare unit, and they're very, very open door because they're always dealing with this particular scenario. So what we've found is that when you've got a core group of people, and they would have some police officers working in there too, not as trained psychs, but they may be that front triage point where they're getting the phone call. So when you're talking to someone, it's like, okay, cool, I'm talking to one of my own, if you get what I mean.
I like that idea, the way that they're being, yeah.
Yeah, so then all of a sudden it's like, Sevan, I totally get where you're coming from, man. I've been in the same situation. These are the things that we're going to do. I'm going to put you onto a psych now. So you got them calm in already a heightened scenario and then explain the process. I think when you actually scale it back, take time and explain how the process works and put people at ease is when they're more in a position of actually wanting to move forward. Because the key problem, and it would be in any workplace, is am I going to get terminated from employment?
That's true.
All of a sudden, I've got a $600,000 home loan, and now all this mental trauma has come in because PTSD just doesn't happen because I just went to a car accident and the next day you've got it. It's accumulation of many years of trauma. So what I understand now is when there's a critical incident and severe trauma, the department now offers for psych services to kick in straight away. But I get it, like a normal business can't afford or nor has the capability to do that. But if we go back to the first scenario where there's a triage point and then, okay, we're going to send you or get someone from this particular area to talk to you, that's the first step for them to actually move forward and get the help that they need.
We're running out of time, but I've got a few more questions I want to get into. I've been in team environments. We create teams here. I love the sports element of team. But there must be something special. You used the word partner before when you said, my partner was with me. And would say team culture is so important in the success of the force. Tell me your take on teams, building teams, motivating teams. I'd love to hear a police officer's view of team culture and how that impacts performance.
I can tell you from the get-go that the culture, whether it's in policing, private enterprise, corporate, other government entities, is exactly the same. So I've had conversations with other friends who are at management positions in different jobs, not just policing, because that can be fairly rudimentary. And it's always fascinated me in the sense of, you're a manager, you manage X amount of people. Like, do you have this type of problem? Yeah, I do. And then it's all of a sudden, it's like, it's not just a policing issue. It's a normal human management issue. So what I always aspired to was, so in policing, we would have what we would call correspondence crew. So one of my last positions, whilst there were 10 sergeants in the office, we would then have 65 to 70 staff, constables, senior constables that we were looking after. So in that cohort, you would have had maybe 6 to 8 of that 65 as your own particular core group of people that you then looked after separately and reported on. So I guess the one key thing that I've always learned was, if you're managing a core group, seek out and understand who are the best of that core group, but don't always give them the best jobs to go and do, because then it creates a morale issue. But it could be like, Sevan, I get that you're really articulated in PowerPoint, but Bob here doesn't even know how to turn a computer on. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to give this task to Bob, and it's going to be, he's going to research a particular topic, let's say a handgun, and then he's going to put together a PowerPoint and a presentation and then documents to give out, and to be able to then have a presentation done to the executive command level. So we're talking way up level of people in policing, or it could just be general population of policing, right? What I want you to do is, I don't want you to handhold him. So when it comes to that type of doing the PowerPoint, just hang around, mate. Do you need a hand? What do we do? Get him to start learning it and playing around with it. Or if there's things you've found online that helped you, give those to him. So now I'm teaching you how to lead and manage. Because it's easy for me to go, come here, Bob, turn the computer, mate, this is how we do PowerPoint, And that's great, because all of a sudden I'm doing what I'm doing anyway. But I want to teach you how to lead and manage. Because when you're learning that and you're teaching him, he's then eventually, if he wants to become a manager, going to teach and learn. So one day when I leave, or you leave or retire or you go elsewhere, he'll always remember that, and then he'll be able to teach. It's a skill set that I'd learnt very early on. And I always learnt to ask the questions to manage as well. And I would sit with managers and go, hey, listen, let's have an open conversation. Tell me some things I can actually improve on myself as a police officer, or as an instructor, or as someone who at the time was an acting sergeant wanting to aspire to be a sergeant. Tell me. And I would always back that up with, be brutally honest with me, I'm not going to get offended. This is the issue I find with a lot of the younger generation, is they get offended very easily. And it's like, you're picking on me, you're harassing me, you're bullying me, as opposed to looking, yeah, you know what, I did screw that up, or I could learn that better and actually learn to grow from it. Everyone's quick to pass the buck and lay blame on everyone else, rather than go, you know what, actually, they're the things I need to do to actually become a better person or a better version of me. So then once you've got all that going, you're now teaching Bob to do PowerPoint. He's done an amazing job. That's lifted the crew. You've now learned a little bit of a management skill. So when you're seeing someone in the group not overly performing, you feel a little bit more empowered to go, hey man, like, have the conversations that you got to have, because you're inadvertently starting to learn it. It's just a very smart and subtle way of doing it. And go, mate, when you've done it, just report back, let me know how it's going. Because then what I'm doing is I'm seeing how you're working. I'm seeing your style, and then I'm starting to feed a little bit more information. I'll go, mate, that was amazing. But you know what, next time when he's doing this, don't forget about this. So you're slowly putting the seeds in. But if I tell you everything from the get-go, you're going to forget anyway. But if I'm feeding you slowly, you're going to keep coming back and going, man, what do you think of this situation? what are you thinking of that? Oh, I want to be a sergeant too now. What do I need to do? So then all of a sudden, I've watched you grow. So now that you want to be a sergeant, I can go, man, I can put in a nice report because I've got confidence in you and I know that you got the capability and ability to actually do what you've got to do as a manager.
We get some coaching, again, like I said, leadership coaching from a gentleman, Cameron Schwab, is a football guy. And he says our jobs as leaders is to scale leadership. And in that scenario, you're scaling leadership. You're teaching leadership and scaling it so that it can grow. So thank you for your service, your leadership. And I truly, truly believe that you've got more to give. And hopefully the legal industry and the firm that you participate in benefit from all your experiences. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the kind words. I truly do. It's not every day we get a chance to really sit and talk about our careers and reflect. But I also want to thank you and your team for actually reaching out and wanting to have a conversation that's somewhat different to what you normally do because you got some great podcasts.
Yeah.
And when the opportunity came up, I'm like, man, I'm grabbing it. I'm definitely going to come in and we'll have a really good chat and be some really interesting, good content to palm out to the listeners and the viewers out there. So, mate, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It was awesome. I can tell you now, everyone that listens to this podcast and the show will get a lot out of this. It's one of my favorites. I have an intrigue into how your life would have been like. I got a bit of a taste of that, and maybe over a beer in the coming weeks, we'll go a bit deeper in some of those stories. So
absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952. And we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Savan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.